My name's Madison Walker. Everyone calls me Maddie. And at exactly 4:12 p.m. on a drizzly Tuesday in Seattle, I watched 9 months of ramen dinners and double shifts vanish behind a single glowing notification on my phone. Hey Maddie, tomorrow's farewell is family only. Please don't make things awkward. Hearts, Mom. I was still sitting in the cramped UX lab where I design checkout flows for an e-commerce giant, the kind of open office that smells like stale espresso and burnt dreams, and the irony hit hard moments earlier I'd hit send $8, $600 to the relocation agency that would launch my little sister Chloe's new life teaching English in Tokyo. My bank screen still pulsed confetti like it was proud of me. I wasn't proud, I was gutted. See, I grew up believing family was a busted umbrella full of holes, but you cling to it anyway because the downpour's worse. I've patched that umbrella for years, covered Mom's medical bills. Rewired Dad's credit score, bailed Chloe out of 3 separate can't make rent but swear I'll pay you back disasters. Today, I finally thought I'd reforged it into something sturdy, a chance for Chloe to step onto a bigger stage and maybe, just maybe, remember who paid for the ticket. But that text felt like someone yanked the fabric off the ribs and left me standing solo in the rain. I stared at my reflection in the dark phone glass neon rainfall streaking the windows behind me, and thought about every small compromise that got me here. The concert I skipped, the weekend getaways, I scrolled past the vintage record player I never bought. Also, Chloe could land in Shibuya with a shiny new apartment. An apartment I'd co-signed because the Japanese landlord needed a U.S. guarantor with a decent credit score. Mine, of course. Dad had texted the lease for my e-signature as casually as if it were a birthday card. I kept waiting for a punchline, but the only sound was my own pulse. A Slack ping popped up from Avery, my best friend, office DJ, and secret keeper. Happy transfer day. Margaritas later, I couldn't answer. My throat felt tight, and my fingers trained to nudge pixels left or right were suddenly useless. When Mom's second message slid in, "Honey, don't overthink this. Let your sister have her special moment hearts." I felt something in my chest knot so hard it made the fluorescent lights flicker. Here's the part. No life coach warns you about the crash isn't just emotional, it's mathematical. I opened my budgeting spreadsheet out of pure masochism. Maddie's Freedom Plan was the title, and watched the remaining balance shrink like a cold horizon, $426.17, to my name until next payday. Meanwhile, Chloe's Instagram story, the one I'd helpfully storyboarded for her, was racking up heart emoji reactions as she filmed her final Goodwill haul. Seattle, you've been real. Next stop, Japan, arigato. She'd tagged me, of course, hashtag best big sis. I closed the spreadsheet, but numbers kept floating in my mind like acid rain. 8,632 hours of overtime, 246 cups of cafeteria coffee. I felt the familiar tug of responsibility. Just let it go. Maddie, be the bigger person, and almost texted back, "It's fine, have fun." Almost. But then my eyes landed on the tiny black umbrella leaning against my desk, the one Chloe forgot outside the apartment last week. Seattle rain had bent its spokes. I'd fixed it with masking tape because that's what I do, patch holes nobody else sees. In that moment, its crooked silhouette looked like a dare. I swiped open my banking app again, heartbeat hammering. There's a button you never notice until you need it. Report fraud, lock transfer. The cursor hovered while a dozen thoughts brawled in my head. Am I really about to torpedo my sister's dream? Or am I rescuing myself from a lifelong pattern of being her personal ATM with a pulse? Chloe's voice played in my memory. You're the reliable one, Mads. That's your superpower. Superpowers I decided shouldn't feel like shackles. With one breath, half terror, half liberation, I tapped lock transfer. The app word then flashed pending review wire frozen. A cold calm washed over me. Next tab, the lease PDF. Adobe asked remove signature. I clicked yes, typed my password, and felt a strange, almost chemical lightness flood my veins. 20 seconds later, the landlord, Ben Morales, rang my phone. I muted him. 20 seconds after that, Mom called. I watched the screen vibrate across my desk like an angry cicada and let it fall silent. Moments later, Dad's name appeared, Robert Walker, CPA, the man who once taught me compound interest on a napkin, but his call went to voicemail too. I needed silence bigger than their explanations. I slid the broken umbrella into my tote, hit the sidewalk, and let the relentless drizzle hit my hair. Seattle clouds were a low, gray ceiling. Somewhere, a siren wailed. City buses hissed, and I felt small but strangely grounded, as if the pavement itself approved. I walked toward Pioneer Square with no plan except breathing. Behind me, push notifications stacked like falling dominoes. Chloe, Mom, Dad, even Aunt Ruth in Florida, each message a different flavor of guilt. None felt heavier than the umbrella in my hand. Halfway down Occidental Avenue, a kid zipped by on a scooter, splashing a puddle straight up my jeans. Normally, I'd curse under my breath. Instead, I laughed because I finally noticed the joke life had been playing. You can't stay dry holding an umbrella full of holes. You either fix it or let the rain baptize you clean. I popped the canopy open, saw the rips I'd taped, and for the first time thought, maybe it's supposed to stay broken, so I remember why I stopped hiding under it. I collapsed it again and kept walking. Avery found me 20 minutes later beneath the neon glow of Elm Coffee Roasters, breathless but grinning. She thrust a steaming to-go cup into my hands. "Double espresso and a side of revenge," she said, eyes scanning my face. "What happened?" One look at the thundercloud in my smile answered her. She raised an eyebrow. "Tell me everything, and don't spare the messy bits," I told her. All of it. The text, the money, the freeze, the lease, the silent phone. Each sentence felt like unloading bricks from a backpack I'd carried so long I forgot it was there. Avery listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking her head so hard her glittery headphones rattled. When I finished, she let out a whistle. "Girl, that's not a family umbrella, that's a straitjacket." She tapped her phone. "Guess what Chloe's farewell party tomorrow night? I'm DJing. Rooftop bar. LED wall 10 feet wide." Her grin turned conspiratorial like a plot twist forming mid-beat. "You want to show them what happens when they label you not family?" The rain tapered to mist as I sipped espresso and let the idea unspool one LED screen. One frozen wire transfer notice, one room full of Chloe's cheer squad. I pictured the moment the text "payment reversed, guarantor withdrawn" flashed behind her champagne toast. The mental image hummed like electricity, equal parts petty and poetic. But revenge stories carry interest rates, and I felt the moral math ticking. Could I really humiliate my sister in public? Would that make me them people who tear someone down to feel taller? Or was it justice at long last? The questions tangled no easy answers until Avery placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's not about payback," she said softly. "It's about proof you're done being the bank of Madison Walker." I stared at the umbrella between my boots, water dripping off its bent ribs. In its reflection on the slick sidewalk, I saw two silhouettes, the fixer I'd always been and the woman I might become if I stopped taping over chaos. I inhaled damp air tinged with espresso and neon and made a decision that tasted like steel. "Cue up your best track, DJ," I whispered. "Tomorrow night, the screen goes live." Avery's grin widened a bass drop before the beat. "Copy that." She bumped my fist, then melted into the crowd, already texting code to hack the LED feed. I watched her vanish, felt my heart slam once, twice, then settle into a rhythm I didn't recognize but wanted to learn. Behind me, my phone buzzed again, Dad's voicemail this time, but I slipped it into my pocket unopened. The night air smelled of wet concrete and possibilities. Somewhere, a fairy horn bellowed across Puget Sound, and I finally heard my own pulse louder than my family's demands. Tomorrow, the umbrella would close for good. And when it did, the rain might drench us all. By sunrise the next morning, I'd slept a grand total of check the smartwatch 38 jittery minutes, most of it with one eye half open, listening for my phone to launch another guilt missile. It didn't disappoint. The screen lit up every few minutes like a slot machine stuck on tilt. Chloe weeping emojis, mom bargaining emojis, dad straight up fire emojis. I left them all in notification hell and poured the last of my oat milk into a mug that read UXers do it with flow, then cracked open the window so the marine layer could slap me awake. Seattle smelled like damp cedar and unfinished dreams. That's usually comforting. Today it felt like a dare. I queued up my fight mode playlist, Childish Gambino, A Sprinkle of Haim, and that one angry Taylor Swift track you only admit to loving after 2 tequilas, then fired an email to Robert Walker, CPA, I acknowledge your messages. Funds frozen pending fraud review. Landlord contacted. Love your vindictive daughter. I almost signed it with a smiley face, but figured sarcasm is like hot sauce, one drop too many and the whole dish burns. Next, I forwarded the wire freeze receipt to Ben Morales, adding alternate guarantor required in 48 hours. Otherwise, lease void under Section 5C. Legalese tastes sweet when you're the one wielding it. 3 sips of lukewarm caffeine later, Jordan Patel's number popped up. Jordan is immigration counsel for half the tech expats in this city, which means he's perpetually triple booked and speaks in bullet points. He jumped right in Maddie, that affidavit of support, you pulled smart move for you potential nightmare for Chloe. If she attempts entry with falsified proof of funds, Japanese immigration could deny on arrival. Worst case, ICE flags the file when she tries to re-enter the States. His voice softened a half step. Are you prepared for your family to blame you if that happens? I stared at the busted umbrella propped by the coat rack tape flapping like a loose bandage. Jordan blame has been my family's love language since AOL chat rooms. I'm fluent. He exhaled the kind of lawyer sigh that costs $400 an hour. Then so be it. Document everything. And Maddie, cut emotional contact until the review clears or they'll guilt you into reversing it. Click. Call over. Invoice incoming. I threw on my rain-scarred trench, stuffed the umbrella inside just in case irony wanted a prop, and power-walked toward the link light rail. The city was a watercolor of gray rooftops and seagull cries commuters bumping my shoulder like pinballs. Halfway to the station, my phone finally rang with a name I hadn't seen since college, Aunt Ruth. Before reason could argue, I answered. Her Florida accent came down the line, sun-warm. No judgment. Baby, your mama's on Facebook saying you've had a mental break. That true? I laughed too hard, startled a pigeon. If financial self-respect counts as mental illness, then yeah, I'm certifiable. Ruth hummed a sound like rocking chair wisdom. Your mama's been leaning on your wallet since you were 15. Maybe time she felt the weather without your umbrella. The word landed heavy, goosebumps flared. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Ruth sighed. Because every storm ends, honey. Make sure you still recognize yourself when the sky clears. She hung up before I could translate that into actionable UX metrics. The light rail screeched into Westlake, and I hopped off into the warren of downtown destination, unknown legs moving on caffeine autopilot. That's when Avery's text pinged, LED feed ready. Need your drama doc by 5. She attached a GIF of fireworks. My pulse spiked. Drama doc, a single slide that would replace the venue's looping skyline animation at the most humiliating moment possible. I pictured Chloe, champagne glass up confetti cannon, primed, and behind her, a 10-foot marquee reading, Funded by Maddie Funds Retracted. Justice felt delicious, but the aftertaste hinted at radioactive fallout. Would the internet see me as a hero exposing entitlement or a monster nuking her own sister's future? Moral ambiguity great for literature, hell on the nerves. I ducked into a co-working loft to hammer out the slide. White background, black typewriter font, clean clinical. I added the freeze notice, the voided lease, and Jordan's advisory stamped confidential. No memes, no glitter gifs, no spiteful commentary. Let the facts prosecute themselves. But before I could hit save, Chloe's caller ID overrode everything, sis. I whispered, a cursed thumb hovered, then something reckless inside me pressed accept. Her voice cracked like cheap porcelain. Maddie, please. I can't get another guarantor this fast. The agency says I'll lose my placement. You know how much this means to me. The guilt I'd barricaded all night slammed through in an instant. I pictured her closet full of half-packed hopes, plane ticket screenshot pinned to her vision board. Yet the cynic in me scrolled through every IOU she never paid back. Chloe, I asked for one thing, a seat at your party. You ghosted me with a group text. She inhaled, shaky. Mom said if you came, it would get awkward because sometimes you make things about yourself. The words tumbled out like pennies, cheap and clinking. My lungs froze. That line had Mom written all over it, but Chloe had chosen to speak it aloud. Maybe I do make things about myself, I said, forcing calm. Today, I'm making my money mine again. That's healthy. Silence spun for 3 heartbeats. Then Chloe's tone sharpened. If I miss this flight, everyone will laugh at me. My whole feed is counting on Tokyo. Don't you dare ruin my narrative. She actually said narrative. Influencer culture had eaten my sibling. Good luck with your narrative, I whispered, and ended the call. My reflection in the laptop screen looked older, eyes ringed with sleepless resolve. I hit save, exported the slide, and fired it off to Avery with a single note. Play this exactly 30 minutes after doors open. No previews. She sent back a skull emoji and a lightning bolt. Deal sealed. Hours blurred a sprint through wireframes at work, a passive-aggressive Slack from my manager, reminding me to log PTO if I was handling personal challenges, an espresso that tasted like burnt apologies. Around 3, Ben Morales finally rang through again. I answered this time. Ms. Walker, I respect your right to withdraw, but understand the lease terminates midnight if no guarantor replaces you. Your sister could sue for damages. I almost laughed. The idea of Chloe affording a civil suit on her barista wages was a sitcom pitch. Thanks, Ben. Midnight it is. He sighed, the landlord version of Jordan's lawyer sigh. You're strangely calm. I'm out of adrenaline, I replied. All that's left is values. At 5:01, I zipped my laptop shut, heart rattling like dice in a Yahtzee cup. The rooftop venue sat 8 blocks away on a downtown high-rise that looked like a stack of glass Jenga tiles. I pictured the LED wall sleeping behind velvet curtains waiting for its cue. Time to change into something battle-ready. I walked home fast, drizzle upgrading to honest rain, pulled the umbrella half-open, tape flapping, and then impulsively I shoved it into a sidewalk trash can. Rain soaked my hair in seconds, cold as truth, but I kept walking taller. No more patch jobs. Back at my studio, I slid into black jeans, leather jacket, and boots that made my 5'6" frame feel 5'8". The mirror showed a woman who might survive any storm. I slipped a USB backup of the drama doc into my pocket because redundant systems save lives and petty plans. Then the apartment intercom buzzed. The screen lit up showing 2 figures, Dad in his accountant trench eyes stormy, and what fresh hell, Chloe clutching a bouquet of lilies like a prop from a rom-com gone wrong. They were on my doorstep in the rain I'd finally decided to feel. And suddenly, every plan LED blast moral stance lawyer letters hinged on the next 60 seconds. To open the door or not. The buzzer droned, and my hand hovered over the release button as thunder cracked somewhere above Capitol Hill. The buzzer kept whining like a dentist's drill, and every press felt louder than the last. I made myself breathe through the panic, 4 counts in, 6 out, then hit the speaker. Yes. My voice came out flat, the way you talk to a telemarketer selling extended warranties at dinner time. Dad's reply crackled through rain static. Madison let us up. We're not leaving until we fix this. Chloe whispered something off mic, probably rehearsing tears, and I pictured her clutching those lilies like an Instagram apology bouquet. My thumb hovered over the unlock key. Part of me wanted the showdown on neutral turf rather than a rooftop with witnesses. Part of me knew once they crossed my threshold, the guilt traps would spring. I chose chess over checkers. I pressed the button. 3 flights later, their footsteps echoed down the hall. Dad's trench dripped onto my doormat, rain beating on his glasses. Chloe's mascara had surrendered twin comet trails down her cheeks. The lilies drooped like they knew they'd been cast in the wrong movie. I stepped aside without offering hugs. Dad scanned the studio apartment, the tiny kitchenette, the thrift store sofa, the freshly empty umbrella stand. His eyes snagged on that absence, but he said nothing, accountant brain tallying damages instead. Chloe tried a wobbly smile. "I brought your favorite." She thrust the flowers forward. "Lilies," I said, voice careful. "I'm allergic, remember?" Her face fell. She honestly didn't. I pointed to the sink. She shuffled over and dumped them in like trash. Dad cleared his throat, slipping into boardroom cadence. "Maddie, your actions have placed the entire family in a precarious legal and financial position." He actually pronounced the commas. "The lease is void at midnight, the agency may sue for breach, and your sister's employment contract is contingent on her visa. We need you to reverse the wire freeze and re-sign as guarantor today." He paused, waiting for me to nod like a junior analyst. I didn't. Instead, I leaned against the countertop, arms folded. "I'll consider it after I'm invited to Chloe's farewell and publicly acknowledged as the funding source." Chloe's eyes widened. "That's so performative." I almost laughed. Big word for someone who monetizes brunch photos. Dad's jaw flexed. "This isn't about parties, it's about family obligations." I exhaled slow. Funny Mom's text said it was about not being family. Chloe jumped in, voice cracking. "Maddie Mom only meant the guest list was tight, the venue small." I raised a hand. "That rooftop holds 200. Spare me." She blinked, busted. Dad switched tactics. "Your mother's health insurance lapses next month. We planned to refinance the house using Chloe's overseas salary as supplemental income. Without the guarantor line, the bank won't approve." And there it was, the real spreadsheet. They hadn't just hitched Chloe's dream to my credit, they'd tied their retirement raft to it, too. I felt the old script rustling, sacrifice for the greater good, Maddie, but something stronger snapped it in half. "Did anyone plan to tell me I was collateral?" I asked. Nobody answered. The rain against my window filled the silence, 1,000 tiny hammers. Chloe stepped closer, mascara tracks drying into armor. "Maddie, I know I messed up. Come to the party. I'll thank you on the mic, tag you in every post, whatever you want. Just please don't ruin my shot." Her voice trembled on ruin, as if I were a storm, not the umbrella she'd shredded. I studied her face, searching for sister-finding influencer metrics instead. "Do you want me there because you love me, or because you need my signature?" I asked. No answer, just wet lashes blinking Morse code. I walked to my desk, pulled out a printed copy of the freeze notice, laid it on the coffee table like evidence. Beside it, I placed the torn umbrella, a visual aid. Dad squinted, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" I tapped the busted spokes. "You've all used my protection so long you stopped noticing the holes until I tossed it." Chloe's eyes flicked from metal ribs to legal document. I saw comprehension dawning like a slow sunrise, painful and bright. Then Dad, desperate, made the fatal move. "If you don't undo this, your mother and I will contest your share of the estate. Actions have consequences." Chloe gasped. She hadn't known the threat was on the table. My chest went ice still. "You mean the estate that's already mortgaged to the hilt?" "Keep it." I pushed the umbrella toward him. "Sell this too." He opened his briefcase as if producing one more spreadsheet might change physics when my phone chimed. "Avery doors, open at 6. LED locked and loaded." "You in?" Dad noticed the notification reading upside down. "What's at 6? I smiled, small but real. Accountability. Chloe reached for my hand. Please don't embarrass me. The brokenness in her tone jolted something soft in my rib cage, years of shared bunk beds and whispered secrets under covers. For one beat, I considered scrapping the rooftop stunt, opting for private reconciliation. But then I remembered her earlier words, "Don't you dare ruin my narrative," and realized she still viewed life as content and me as a prop. I slid my hand away. I handed Dad a clean sheet of paper. New deal. Invite me tonight. Stand beside me when Chloe thanks me publicly. After that, I'll sign a limited guarantor agreement covering only her lease, nothing tied to your refinance. You have 2 hours to decide. His eyes narrowed. Accountants hate ambiguous terms. And if we refuse? The clock on the microwave clicked 4:11 p.m., exactly 24 hours since the text that started the war. Then the umbrella stays broken, I said, voice steady. Dad gathered his trench around him like dignity stitched with rainwater. We'll discuss and call you. He herded Chloe toward the door. She paused on the threshold, looking back at the umbrella, then at me, lower lip trembling like a compass needle in a quake. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I answered with the truest thing I had. Wanting isn't doing. The door shut soft but final. I locked the deadbolt, slid down the wall, and let myself shake. Power is heavier than submission. Nobody tells you that. Holding the line felt like bench pressing a freight train. My phone dinged Aunt Ruth again, storms loud, but so is silence. Proud of you. Tears stung my eyes. I blinked them away. No time. I grabbed waterproof eyeliner battle paint and zipped the USB into my jacket. Clock read 4:38 p.m. 2 hours until RSVP. Outside, thunder muttered as if the sky were debating whose side to take. I wondered whether Dad would gamble on humiliation or cooperation, whether Chloe would trade pride for passport stamps. I wondered how many holes an umbrella can have before it's just a skeleton. The window rattled with wind. I whispered to the room, to myself, to whatever gods watch over messy daughters. Let them choose quickly. I've already chosen. The microwave clock blinked to 4:39. Somewhere downtown, an LED screen warmed up, waiting for its cue. The microwave clock flipped to 5:00 p.m., and the apartment felt like a pressure cooker set to max. Every minute, with no callback from my father, hissed a little louder, daring me to second-guess myself. I paced from kitchenette to sofa, rehearsing worst-case scenarios. Chloe live-streaming my betrayal, Mom collapsing into a martyr swoon, Dad lawyering up with spreadsheets like shuriken. At 5:12, my phone finally rang Dad's number, but when I answered, it was Mom, voice syrupy and razor-thin. Sweetheart, your father's too upset to talk. We've decided the guest list is final. Please don't create a scene that would damage Chloe's mental health. Translation, exile confirmed, umbrella rejected. I thanked her for the clarification, hung up, and felt a calm, colder than the Puget Sound, slide into my bones. The decision had been made for me. All that remained was the choreography of consequences. I pulled the leather jacket tight, grabbed the backup USB, and stepped into rain so heavy it blurred the skyline into watercolor. No umbrella now, let the storm baptize the choice. Each block toward the high-rise felt like walking a gangplank, but I kept counting off reasons like prayer beads, financial boundaries, truth-telling, self-respect. By the time I reached the chrome elevator and rode it up 26 floors, I was soaked to the scalp, yet oddly weightless, as if shedding denial had trimmed invisible ballast. The rooftop venue was already pulsing with EDM bass and ring light glow when I slipped past the check-in desk. Avery spotted me from the DJ booth, shot me a conspiratorial salute, and pointed to the mammoth LED wall asleep behind a velvet scrim. Guests milled around, sipping yuzu spritzers, Seattle's influencer micro-dynasties comparing sustainable raincoats. Half of them wore translucent ponchos that cost more than my monthly rent. I parked myself at the edge of the bar, hands wrapped around nothing but the chill in the air, and scanned for my family. There, near the makeshift stage, Mom in pearl white blazer. Dad tight-jawed beside a corporate banker I didn't recognize, and Chloe radiant in a silk jumpsuit the color of Sunrise phone held high as she narrated a selfie tour. Can't believe this is real, you guys. Tokyo tomorrow. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and shoved me out of frame with selective focus. 6:03 p.m. Doors officially open. Avery's text burned across my lock screen. Timer starts now, 30 minutes. My pulse answered like a kick drum. Still doubt poked its head. Was I about to become the villain in millions of TikTok stitches? Did justice justify spectacle? But then Mom's laughter carried across the rooftop, bright and brittle, and I remembered her phrase, "Don't create a scene." The phrase wielded my whole life to keep family secrets polished and public image spotless. Tonight, the polish was coming off. At 6:21, Chloe climbed the riser mic, trembling in her manicured hand. String lights flickered overhead like nervous confetti. Friends, fam, and future collaborators, she began, voice amplified over the city's heartbeat. I'm so grateful for the love that got me here. She gestured toward our parents, especially Mom and Dad, who taught me to chase dreams fearlessly. No mention of me, no hint of the guarantor whose signature still clung to the lease like ghost ink. Gasps of adoration rippled. Camera phones rose like a field of metallic lilies, and I felt the old ache of invisibility press on my lungs. 27 minutes. Avery caught my eye, hand hovering above the launch pad. I gave a single nod. 6:30 on the dot. The house music cut. The LED scrim whisked upward and the screen snapped to life. White background, black typewriter font, 5 feet tall, spelling out lease guarantor withdrawn payment, frozen for fraud review. Underneath, a high-res scan of my bank receipt rotated slowly, and in the corner, the silhouette of Chloe's forgotten umbrella flickered like an X-ray of every patched lie. A collective hush sucked the oxygen from the rooftop. Champagne flutes froze midair. Chloe spun around, jaw unhinged phone, still live streaming the moment to hundreds of unsuspecting followers. For 3 eternal beats, the image hovered, fact, not insult, and then Dad lunged toward an AV technician barking orders, but Avery had locked the inputs. Mom reached for Chloe, whispering frantic damage control, while whispers spread through the crowd. Is that legal? Wait, the sister paid influencer scam. Someone laughed, cruel and bright. Someone else started filming because the internet never met a flame it wouldn't gasoline. Adrenaline flooded me, not triumphant, but surgical. This is what a boundary looks like in pixels. Chloe whirled, eyes tracking until she found me at the bar, rainwater still dripping from my bangs. How could you? She mouthed across the distance, voice drowned by the rising chatter. I didn't answer out loud. I simply placed 2 fingers to my temple and a silent salute, then let my hand fall, closing an invisible umbrella. Her face crumpled, not in rage this time, but something softer, recognition maybe that the narrative she curated had a hidden author all along. Security finally yanked the power. The screen went dark, and a murmur of aftershocks rolled through the rooftop like distant thunder. Avery kicked the music back on some mellow synthwave to keep fists from flying and texted me one word: exit. But as I turned to leave, my phone rang. Jordan Patel. Instinct screamed voicemail, yet something told me to answer. He spoke fast. Heads up, Maddie. Agency flagged the frozen funds to Homeland Security. Chloe could be denied boarding at SeaTac tomorrow, but because your name's on initial paperwork, you might get questioned too. Recommend you prep a statement tonight. My stomach lurched. I'd expected blowback, not federal jurisdiction. Can they detain me? I asked. Unlikely, but they'll want clarifications. Call me at 7 a.m. We'll draft a response. He hung up. I slipped the phone away, mind spinning. The rooftop scene had shifted. Some guests were consoling Chloe, others already posting think pieces in stories. Mom stared at me with a blend of terror and plea, mouthing, "Please help." Dad avoided my gaze, busy collecting coats, actuarial instinct to minimize loss. For a heartbeat, I saw my younger self in Chloe's posture, shoulders collapsing under weight she never trained for, and sympathy drilled a hairline crack in my armor. But then I remembered Jordan's warning shared liability could drown me if I leapt back in. Responsibility versus rescue, self-preservation versus compassion, old conflicts wearing new uniforms. A gust of wind whipped across the rooftop, scattering cocktail napkins like white feathers. One plastered against my knee. I peeled it off and noticed a printed hashtag new beginnings. The irony stung. New beginnings rarely arrive clean. They crash in like rogue waves, scatter the old furniture, force you to decide what's worth salvaging. I glanced at the USB in my pocket, symbol of one choice, and at Chloe's trembling silhouette, symbol of another. Somewhere below, the elevator dinged. Probably building security summoned to mediate. I had 60 seconds, maybe less, to choose whether to stay and offer a lifeline or walk away before the story swallowed me again. Avery's track dropped a bass line exactly, then vibrating through the concrete, syncing with my pulse. I took one step toward the exit, then stopped, rainwater pooling at my boots, conscience tugging like a rip current. The elevator doors slid open behind me, and the first uniformed guard stepped out, eyes sweeping for the source of the chaos. Decision time. The guard's radio crackled as he scanned the rooftop guests, parting like nervous seagulls. I felt his gaze land on me, the lone woman soaked to the skin, conspicuously calm in a storm she'd summoned. I could still bolt, vanish into the elevator, let the narrative curdle without a main character. But the weight of that USB in my pocket reminded me silence now would stitch my own noose. So I pivoted, marched straight toward the security cluster, and before anyone could intercept, I climbed the riser Chloe had abandoned. The mic was still live. My pulse hammered, palms slick, but my voice came out steady, amplified across the stunned crowd. Hi, I'm Madison Walker, primary guarantor on the Tokyo lease you just saw terminated. I didn't come to embarrass my sister. I came to stop a pattern of financial exploitation that's followed me since high school. Tonight's screen showed proof, not spite. If anyone here feels confused or betrayed, welcome to my club. Murmurs rippled, a mix of sympathy, scandal, hunger, and pure rubberneck reflex. I spotted Mom clutching Dad's sleeve, mouth an outraged O. Chloe frozen mid-tier livestream, still rolling. Avery at the DJ booth giving me a subtle keep-going nod. I raised a hand. One more thing. Chloe's agency submitted documents listing me as co-sponsor of her work visa. I never signed those. Someone falsified my consent. That line detonated. The banker beside Dad sucked air through his teeth. Influencers lowered ring lights, sensing real-world legal fallout is bad for brand deals. Chloe's voice cracked from below the stage. I never forged anything. I trusted our parents. Both heads whipped toward Mom, whose powdered composure fissured. Dad stepped forward, but I held the mic like a shield. There's an easy way to clear this up, I said, pulling the USB. This contains every legitimate form I filled and none of the extra schedules attached to Chloe's visa packet. If copies exist with my digital signature, they're forged. I handed the drive to the guard, whose eyebrows shot sky high. Seattle PD's property desk can verify metadata. The guard nodded, radioed something terse. Suddenly, this wasn't just a family meltdown, it was potential identity theft. My phone vibrated. Jordan again, all caps text. Urgent, credit line opened in your name last week. Filing fraud report now. Call me as soon as safe. My knees nearly buckled. Mom had sworn my credit was untouched, but the timing fit too neatly, a secret loan to float the refinance until Chloe's salary kicked in. I met her eyes. She looked away, guilt bright as lightning on a glassy sea. The mic squealed from feedback as I lowered it, my confidence swerving into something hotter, righteous fury. Mom, did you open that account? I asked quietly. No stage voice now, just daughter to mother. Her chin quivered. She started to speak, but Dad cut in, voice brittle. Enough public spectacle. We'll resolve this privately. The guard stepped between us. Sir, given the allegations, I need all parties to remain until officers arrive. Gasps. Phones rose again. Dad bristled, control slipping from his ledgers. Chloe rushed forward, mascara streaks like war paint. Maddie, you're killing my future. The words sliced, but I saw the wobble of real panic beneath influencer polish. No, I said gentler than I felt. I'm saving mine. You still have yours if you build it on honesty. For a beat, sisterhood flickered two kids under shared blankets. But then sirens wailed faintly below and the spell broke. Chloe backed away, betrayal etched over fear. The guard's radio barked unit en route, DHS liaison tagging along. Homeland Security Jordan was right. My stomach dropped, but I squared my shoulders. Truth is lighter than lies in the long run. Avery slipped through the crowd, carrying a towel and a thermos of hot coffee. You good? She whispered, placing both in my trembling hands. I managed a ragged smile. Define good. Her grin flashed. Badass enough. She squeezed my arm and melted back to her booth, already spinning a chilled, down-tempo track that lowered heart rates across the venue. Minutes stretched like wet taffy until the elevator doors dinged again, revealing two SPD officers and a plainclothes man flashing a DHS badge. The crowd inhaled as one. The guard briefed them. The DHS agent, mid-30s, raincoat eyes, sharp but not unkind, walked straight to me. Ms. Walker, I'm Agent Molina. Need a statement regarding suspected document fraud tied to an overseas placement. Are you willing to cooperate? I swallowed steam from Avery's thermos, nodded. Marrying courage to self-preservation, I asked, Am I being detained? Not currently, he said. But I'll need you downstairs for formal questions. He glanced at Chloe. Mom, Dad. All signatories, too. Mom's knees buckled. Dad caught her. Chloe hugged herself, silk jumpsuit suddenly flimsy in the night wind. Agent Molina gestured toward the elevator. I descended first, flanked by Law and Consequences coffee, trembling between my fingers like a captured heartbeat. Halfway down, the elevator's mirrored walls showed us in tableau-soaked Rebel Stoic officer badge, glinting a snapshot of a choice that started with a broken umbrella and led to federal jurisdiction. My reflection looked exhausted, but unmistakably alive, stripped of people-pleasing lacquer. I thought of Aunt Ruth's warning, recognize yourself when the sky clears, and realized storm clouds sometimes follow you inside steel boxes. At the lobby security desk, Molina asked me to sit while they collected the others. I texted Jordan with DHS now. Send affidavit soon. He replied instantly, emailed. Remember, you withdrew when you discovered discrepancies. That's protective action, not sabotage. I exhaled shaky relief, wiped rain from my forehead with Avery's towel. Behind the glass doors, the city glowed neon against charcoal clouds. I pictured the rooftop lilies already wilting without water. A janitor would toss them before sunrise. Symbols rot when untended. The elevator opened, and my parents shuffled out, Chloe behind them, phone finally pocketed. Officers guided them to adjacent chairs. Nobody spoke. The ceiling HVAC hummed like white noise in a therapist's office, daring you to crack first. I studied my father's face, creased, frightened, furious at a system he couldn't spreadsheet away. Mom's fingers twisted her pearl bracelet until the elastic snapped, beads clattering across tile like hard rain. Chloe's shoulders shook not from cold now, but from the implosion of a brand. Agent Molina broke the silence. Preliminary review shows Ms. Walker's digital certificate was copied onto supplemental visa forms without authentication. That's felony fraud under both state and federal statutes. All oxygen vanished from the lobby. Dad's lips formed a silent calculation, prison probability asset forfeiture. Mom inhaled a sob. Chloe slipped off her heels and hugged her knees, silk pooling like a deflated sunrise. Molina continued. Given cooperative posture, I'm opting for voluntary interviews tonight and court summons afterward. Anyone wishing counsel may request it. He looked at me last. Ms. Walker, You'll go first since you reported the discrepancy. My heartbeat drummed. Yes. I stood, coffee forgotten, and followed him toward a conference room that smelled of toner and destiny. Just before passing through the doorframe, I glanced back. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes, but Mom whispered something I could lip read even from 10 feet. You broke us. I felt the words hit sharp and inevitable, yet under them another sentence echoed, one she didn't see. Or maybe I finally let us break where we were already cracked. I turned away before tears could surface. Agent Molina held the door. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed. A recorder blinked red atop the table. He gestured to a chair. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Walker. I sat spine straight despite exhaustion and folded my hands, the posture of testimony. On the polished surface, I saw faint reflections me recorder badge. No umbrella now, but the rain still whispered on the roof, a reminder of storms endured. I drew a breath, opened my mouth, and began. I started at the beginning. The ramen dinners, the double shifts, the $8, $600 wire, the text that splintered everything. Agent Molina's recorder blinked a steady red, while my words sketched the anatomy of a quiet exploitation, signatures traded like poker chips, love leveraged like collateral, an umbrella patched until it became a cage. Halfway through, Molina slid a folder across the table, color printouts of loan documents opened in my name last week, e-signatures identical to mine, except for a microscopic timestamp mismatch fraud in high resolution. My parents' names sat beneath mine as co-applicants. A queasy mix of fury and heartbreak churned, but I kept talking. Truth is an avalanche. Once it starts, you either ride it or get buried. When I finished, Molina clicked the recorder off. Your statement aligns with the metadata, he said. Uncontested, your liability is minimal. Minimal, not non-existent law always leaves a service fee. He offered me a plastic bottle of water. My hands shook, taking it, exhaustion flooding in now that adrenaline's lease expired. Molina's phone buzzed, Jordan Patel on speaker, already securing a provisional immunity agreement if I testified against whoever forged my signature. Molina raised an eyebrow. You okay with that? I pictured Mom's pearl bracelet scattering like hailstones, Dad's spreadsheets deflating, Chloe's sunrise jumpsuit fading into gray. I nodded. I'm okay telling the truth. We stepped back into the lobby. Officers had separated our little trinity into corners like kids caught cheating on a test. Dad stared at the floor. Mom clutched tissues. Chloe sat cross-legged, scrolling her feed with the haunted focus of someone cleaning digital blood off a brand. Molina announced the next interview, Dad. As they passed me, he muttered without looking up. Proud of yourself? I answered softly. Proud of the boundary. He flinched like the word stung. 2 hours later, interviews ended. No arrests tonight. Molina preferred summons over cuffs, but he served each of us a stack of documents thicker than denial. Mom tried to hug me. I stepped back. She whispered I was scared of losing the house. I thought of Aunt Ruth's storm warning and managed a tired, "You almost lost more than that." Dad signed his notice with trembling hands. Chloe wouldn't meet my eyes, but when Molina reminded her she could still fly if she secured an independent guarantor and cleared the paperwork, she whispered thanks. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Gratitude from the stage where humility used to live felt strange. Outside, rain had thinned to a shimmering mist. Avery waited by a rideshare, arms crossed, holding my discarded umbrella. She'd fished it from the rooftop trash. She twirled it like a baton. Thought you might need the relic, she said. History belongs in museums, I answered, but took it anyway. Tape dangled, metal ribs creaked. Still, it was mine. Avery climbed into her ride window, lowered. Call me if you need bail money or margaritas. I saluted with the umbrella. Car taillights disappeared into wet streets. I trudged the 10 blocks home. Halfway, Chloe's contact popped on my phone. I almost declined, then swiped accept. Her voice was a raw whisper. They're blaming you, you know. I figured, I said. She sniffed. But I'm blaming me too. Silence stretched. I found a nonprofit in Osaka. She continued, words shaky but determined. They place teachers and don't require family guarantors. Pays less, but it's honest. I'm reapplying. I imagined her refreshing a website at 2 a.m., pride traded for reality. Good, I said, and meant it. She exhaled. I'll pay back what I owe. Might take years. Years pass anyway, I replied. She laughed, surprised. Before hanging up, she added, I kept one lily. Don't be allergic over the phone, okay? I smiled into the drizzle. Progress comes in strange bouquets. My studio greeted me with silence, and the soft hum of the fridge a symphony compared to the lobby showdown. I tossed the umbrella on the table, watched droplets spread like constellations on the wood surface. Next to it lay the towel Avery gave me. I used it to wipe the tape flaps, smoothing them flat. Maybe some relics deserve archiving, not discarding reminders of storms proof I survived. At dawn, Jordan called, voice giddy on 3 hours sleep. Your immunity's set. DHS dropping your liability, focusing on forged docs. Civil court's another story, but you're positioned strong. I thanked him, promised testimonial footage, ended the call. Phone battery flashed 4%. Always another resource, running low. I brewed the last of my coffee, opened my laptop, and drafted a public post, not a subtweet, not a flame thread, just a simple statement. Boundaries are love wearing armor. Tonight, I chose both. Attached a black and white photo of the closed umbrella on my table, tape scars visible. I tagged no one. Hit publish. Let narratives fend for themselves. Weeks rippled by. DHS subpoena arrived. Dad lawyered up. Mom emailed, once subject line heartbroken body blank. I forwarded it to Jordan, then archived. Chloe updated her followers, new wrote same dream. Comments divided, algorithms feasted. Aunt Ruth sent a postcard showing a Florida thunderstorm breaking over flat ocean, scribbled, proud the storm didn't sink you. I pinned it above my desk. The biggest change came quietly, my bank account stayed mine. Each Friday, the paycheck landed, and nothing leached out in temporary family loans. Freedom tasted like ordinary groceries, name-brand cereal, blueberries, cheese not on markdown. I still felt twinges, shadows of old reflexes, but when Mom's number appeared, I weighed the call like a purchase I could no longer afford and let it ring. One rainy Sunday. Seattle seldom offers other flavors. I walked to a community center in the Central District, carrying a new umbrella bright red with steel spokes intact. Inside, 20 young women sat in folding chairs clutching grant applications. Above them hung a banner I'd printed at Kinko's, the Closed Umbrella Fund Micro Grants for First-Gen Dreamers. The $8, $600 seed money no longer languished in a frozen wire. It now scattered in 10 $860 slices of possibility. I told them my story without names, offered tools for budgets, warned about love laced with debt. When I finished, one girl raised her hand. How do you know when help becomes harm? I opened the old umbrella tape and all held it high so everyone saw the holes. When shelter blocks the sky, I said, or when it's the only shade you're allowed. They nodded like survivors decoding weather patterns. I left the relic propped in a corner, the first artifact of a fledgling museum of boundaries. That night, walking home beneath the unbroken red canopy, I noticed the mist easing into scattered stars. The city's wet asphalt mirrored constellations, a reminder that reflections can shine even after downpours. My phone buzzed, unknown number. I answered. A calm voice spoke. Ms. Walker, this is Agent Molina. Quick update, investigations wrapping. Additional forged accounts surfaced, none traceable to you. Your cooperation accelerated everything. Thank you. Relief spread warm as sunrise. Before he hung up, he added, almost conversational, weather's clearing. Thought you'd want to know. I laughed, federal agents making small talk about storms, then thanked him and pocketed the phone. At the corner of Yesler and Broadway, I paused. Rain had stopped completely, clouds pulling back like theater curtains. I tilted the red umbrella, listened to water drip off its rim, then clicked it shut. For the first time in months, no droplets threatened overhead. I considered tossing the umbrella skyward like a graduation cap, but settled for twirling it by the handle lighter than the old one, free of tape, mine by purchase, not penance. A text arrived. Chloe again. Got the Osaka offer. Leave in June. No guarantor needed. Wanted you to be first to know. Also, I mailed a check. It isn't much yet. She appended a photo, one lily taped to a boarding pass, petals slightly browned but upright. I typed back, proud of you. Water the lily. See you when you're ready. Hit send. I reached my building, keyed in, set the red umbrella next to the taped relic. 2 versions of protection, one that broke, one that held. Maybe I'd keep both reminders that boundaries aren't about shutting storms out, but choosing which drops are worth feeling. Inside, I brewed tea, opened the window, and let the night air carry in the faintest scent of wet cedar. Below, traffic hummed a lullaby of ordinary life. No sirens, no buzzing guilt, just city heartbeat. I closed my eyes, listened, and felt a space inside me widen like sky finally unobstructed. Lightning flickered far off over the sound, but it looked almost decorative, nature's distant applause. Somewhere between those clouds and my quiet apartment stretched the rest of my life, messy, damp, unafraid. I left the window open and let the breeze write the epilogue. I'm Ian Maxwell, 26, newly minted attorney. Last month, I strode across the university stage in a midnight blue suit, summa cum laude sash brushing my knees. Cameras flashed, friends whooped, professors beamed, and the 5 seats I'd reserved, front row gold-lettered name cards that read "Reserved for the Maxwells," sat as empty as a condemned house. I posed for photos anyway. Handshake with the dean, grin beside my study group, thumb up with the constitutional law legend who once told me I had a litigator's spine. Inside, though, I felt nothing, just the cold knowledge that my parents had chosen my brother Nathan's flashy launch party over my once-in-a-lifetime graduation. That call had come a week earlier. Sweetheart Mom said, breezy as ever, your dad and I might skip the ceremony. Nathan's app is having its big debut. Sounds more relevant, translation, Ian, good work, but your brother's hypothetical success outshines your actual achievements. Nathan is 2 years younger, a dropout turned visionary founder. He burns investor cash on neon slide decks and rooftop selfies. Meanwhile, I bartended weekends, taught freshman seminars, ate ramen over casebooks, and still landed a federal clerkship with Judge Harrow. When I texted that news home, Mom asked if clerk meant I'd be fetching coffee. Dad responded with a single emoji. So their absence on graduation day didn't surprise me, but the silence afterward did. No call, no card, not even a sorry we missed it. Watching classmates hug tear-damp mothers beneath the chandeliered ceiling, I felt an old weight settle between my ribs, resignation wearing the mask of contempt. I thanked everyone else who mattered, professors, scholarship committees, even my landlord who'd forgiven 3 late rent fees, then buried myself in bar exam prep. Results dropped in mid-July. I passed on the first swing, top percentile, but told no one at home. Why feed a family chat already choking on Nathan's dog in sunglasses selfies? Judge Harrow's mentor called a friend at the New York Herald. 2 days later, a feature appeared, first-generation grad tops bar joins prestigious firm. My photo, half-smile suit, a shade lighter than the backdrop, circled in red ink. I read the piece once, folded, it went back to packing for my move downtown. A knock rattled my apartment door that Friday. There stood Dad in Khakis newspaper under his arm like a white flag. We hadn't met face to face in months. He lifted the paper, eyes searching mine as though he expected me to autograph it. Why didn't you tell us, he asked, not angry, just bewildered, as if he'd misplaced his keys and suspected I'd hidden them. I leaned against the frame. You could read the headline, I said. He glanced down. Against the odds, Ian Maxwell rises from ramen to rising star. His brow creased. First gen, that's not... Because you never showed up, I cut in. Not for graduation, not for anything. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Words evaporating like steam off asphalt. My phone buzzed on the counter, the firm confirming they'd cover 6 months' rent. I stepped inside to answer, leaving the door wide. Dad lingered, shoulders slumping. When I turned back, he tried again. Your mother, she didn't mean the launch too. Don't I said? You had the date for months. I worked 2 jobs, skipped sleep, lost friends because I thought if I hit every mark I'd finally matter to you. You couldn't spare a text. He rubbed the back of his neck. You always seemed okay, like you didn't need us. The words stung precisely because they were half true. I had acted unbreakable, never complained when they framed Nathan's podcast screenshot, yet shoved my scholarship letter into a drawer, never protested when he got a $3,000 drone and I unwrapped socks. I'd played the self-sufficient son so well they believed the role even I almost did. I needed you, I said quietly. I just stopped expecting you. Silence stretched brittle as old parchment. Then he murmured about Nathan investors pulling out pressure, mounting the kid, spending days in his room. You always think of him first, I said, voice harder than intended. I could be bleeding out, and you'd ask if Nathan needed a Band-Aid. Dad flinched. What can we do now? Your bar swearing in, may we come? I pictured that empty row in the auditorium, remembered the hollow ache. I'll let you know, I said, but don't count on front row seats. He nodded, folded the paper smaller, and walked down the stairwell looking shrunken, almost breakable. When the door clicked shut, I exhaled a breath I'd been holding since childhood. 10 minutes later, my phone chimed again. Nathan. Saw the article. Nice of you to keep it quiet. Parents acting like you're a celebrity now. Could you intro me to someone for a bridge loan? Even in free fall, he found a way to turn my moment into his safety net. I set the phone face down and stared out the window at a food truck line snaking along the curb, strangers basking in ordinary summer light. Somewhere between that silence and the hum of tires on asphalt, a realization settled my worth no longer hinged on a seat my parents never claimed. I moved downtown the first Sunday of August, the city heat wavering above the river like something alive, and I told myself the skyline was a fresh ledger, every window a blank cell waiting for new entries. Yet as the boxes thumped onto the parquet, a text from Nathan pinged. Mom says you still won't call, so I'm the envoy, bro. Call her. And I felt the ledger stain before any numbers had been written. A faint smear, no eye could miss once it was there, daring me to rub it out and risk tearing the page. Orientation at Whitaker and Sloan lasted all of 30 minutes before Judge Harrow's clerk ushered me into chambers with a grin that said Showtime Rookie. Harrow handed me a slim file marked Rossi v. Grayspire Holdings and asked if I felt like wrestling Goliath before breakfast. The tenants in Rossi were nurses, retirees, first-gen kids like me facing eviction, so Grayspire could flip the building into boutique condos a story older than the city's cobblestones. I swallowed, nodded, and heard myself promise to draft an injunction by Friday, even though clerks weren't supposed to moonlight as crusaders, especially not against a corporate whale rumored to bankroll half the tech startups south of Market Street. Halfway through the file, a name leapt out, Avalanche Capital lead investor in Grayspire. And according to Nathan's LinkedIn brag sheets, the same firm that had floated his second funding round. Suddenly, the case wasn't just David and Goliath. It was family dinner with a grenade under the roast, and I could either defuse it or pretend the pin was still in. That night, among half-unpacked boxes, I reread Mom's handwritten apology sunflower doodle in the margin ink slightly smudged where a tear must have fallen, and understood she'd mailed her contrition before learning their mortgage was now collateral for Nathan's failing dream. A fact he texted me at 1 a.m. as if he were confessing nothing worse than borrowing my jacket. Needed quick leverage. Bro, house will be fine once Series C lands, just keep Avalanche happy, yeah. Sleep evaporated. I kept picturing the old clapboard place on Sycamore Lane, Dad's weekend drywall patches. Mom's petunias, my initials carved on the porch rail going up at auction because my brother had sold a future he couldn't guarantee. By dawn, I had every Grayspire file spread across the floor. Highlighter neon against the clauses Avalanche had slipped into 99-year leases clauses that let them raise rent 300% whenever renovation was declared. It was legal engineering as elegant and deadly as a scalpel. And if I brought it to Judge Harrow, I might end Avalanche's tenancy in my brother's life and possibly mine at the firm. I hit print anyway, the copier spitting pages like an anxious metronome, each sheet a drumbeat saying choose. Wednesday. Judge Harrow called me in, eyes flicking from the bulging folder to my face. "You realize who sits on Avalanche's board?" he asked. I did state senators, former judges, rainmakers who wrote the unwritten rules of our profession. He let the silence stretch, then said almost kindly, "Every lawyer meets a crossroads, polish the ladder, or kick it out from under men who shouldn't be climbing. Make sure the fall you're planning isn't your own." I walked back to my cubicle, with the folder tucked under one arm, like contraband pulse hammering mind already listing the consequences in descending order of ruin. But beneath the fear thrummed something steadier, outrage that the scales of justice were still rigged with counterfeit weights, and the knowledge that I had spent a lifetime proving I could bear more than was fair without breaking. Thursday evening, Nathan showed up unannounced, rain-slick hoodie eyes red around the rims as if he'd been awake as long as I had. He tried his old grin, found it wouldn't stick, and muttered, "I'm in deep, Ian. Avalanche calls the note next month if metrics don't spike. Mom and Dad don't know." He paused, scanning the stacks of gray spire depositions on my table, realization dawning like rot spreading under paint. "You're going after them," he whispered. I waited, heart loud. "If you burn them, you burn me." His voice cracked, not accusation, not plea, just raw terror. I'd imagined this confrontation 100 ways, me righteous, him defensive, some cinematic slam of doors. Instead, the room filled with two boys who once built Lego towns and believed the same plastic walls could protect them forever. I set the Rossi file between us, my hand on the cover. Maybe I said we find a way both towns stay standing or we rebuild from rubble, but honestly this time. He stared silent. And in that silence, the copier's green light flashed ready for the next page, waiting to decide whether it would illuminate a weapon or a blueprint for something better. And that decision, mine, his hours, hung in the air, trembling, unfinished. That night, after Nathan's trembled admission, I sat at my kitchen table until sunrise, legal pads spreading like lily pads across the wood, while the city outside yawned awake. Somewhere between cup 3 and 4 of stale coffee, I stopped listing consequences and began mapping possibilities if Avalanche's eviction plan relied on tenant tracking data scraped without consent that could shred their case, but the only platform with that granular geofence info was, of course, my brother's sputtering app. At 7 a.m., I locked the Rossi file in my briefcase, threw on the Navy suit that had already survived 2 ceremonies and 1 shattered childhood, and walked to chambers rehearsing a pitch, expose Avalanche's privacy breach, win a temporary injunction, buy tenants a lifeline, and dare the boardroom giants to swat at the clerk who'd yanked off their mask. I had no proof yet, only a theory and a knot in my gut. But sometimes the first brick of a bridge is belief strong enough to hold your own weight, and as I pushed Harrow's door, I felt that brick take shape beneath me, even while the river of risk roared below. Judge Harrow listened without blinking while I laid out the skeleton overlapping GPS pings, targeted rent increase notices, arriving the same week. Nathan's app launched a neighborhood analytics feature, internal emails, hinting at data synergy between Avalanche subsidiaries. When I finally exhaled, he tapped a pen against the Rossi cover and said, "Obtain the flesh by Monday, affidavits, metadata trails, something a first-year associate can't shrug off or we let the tide roll. Understand?" I nodded, throat desert dry, because obtaining that flesh meant turning my own brother's servers inside out. And even if I found the smoking code snippet, I'd torch whatever chance he had left to refinance the family mortgage he'd already pawned. Harrow slid the file back to me. "If your compass points true," he murmured, "trust that the map will redraw around you." I left chambers buoyed by resolve and sick with dread, a sailor who'd nailed his colors to the mast, only to glimpse the storm cresting higher than the sails. Nathan met me that afternoon in a windowless co-working closet that reeked of burnt espresso and venture desperation. His hoodie looked slept in his eyes worse, but when I asked for server logs, he didn't argue, just stared at the ceiling like it might show him a softer universe. If Avalanche sees I cooperated, he said they'll crush me before the market can. I told him silence would do the crushing for them and pushed a USB across the desk. While code scrolled on his screen, a childhood refrain looped in my head. Two brothers, one flashlight hunting monsters under the bed, and I realized we had grown up only to find the monsters had bank accounts and lobbying arms. 3 hours later, we hit pay dirt, a batch script that funneled zip-level tenant movement from Nathan's app straight into Gray Spire's rent algorithms, stamped with a timestamp 4 weeks before eviction notices dropped. Nathan's shoulders sagged as though the script weighed physical tons. He whispered, "They told me it was anonymized." Outside, traffic blared indifferent, as if daring us to claim that excuse in open court. Monday's emergency hearing was standing room only reporters jockeying for angles, while Avalanche's counsel, polished marble in human form, smirked at the clerk who'd apparently overdosed on righteous caffeine. I presented the logs, the cross-referenced timestamps, the memo where a Gray Spire VP crowed data pipeline live time to milk the nurse nest. Murmurs rippled like wind over wheat. Avalanche's team objected, motioned, blustered, but Harrow's gavel cracked the room to silence before granting a 90-day injunction and hinting loudly about federal privacy violations. My phone buzzed nonstop afterward. Partners at Whitaker and Sloan fuming over lost retainers. A junior reporter begging for comment. Mom's number appearing, then vanishing, as if she couldn't decide whether apology or accusation should come first. I walked down the courthouse steps into noon sunlight that felt both scalding and clean, aware I might have nuked my budding career, my brother's balance sheet, and my parents' equity in one swing of principle. Yet inside a strange calm bloomed a lighthouse beam cutting the smoke, because for once the ledger of my life showed the right numbers in the right columns, even if the bottom line was still dripping in red. That evening, Dad called to say the bank had frozen their line of credit foreclosure letters, whispering at the edge of the mailbox. His voice was a weathered fence about to give. Nathan, he said, had confessed everything. Server scripts, the mortgage collateral, then gone quiet, packing boxes in the room where our Lego towns once sprawled. I pictured the Sycamore house breathing like an aging boxer on the ropes, petunia beds holding their color against October chill, and heard myself promise nothing except honesty. I would testify if subpoenaed. I couldn't conjure lost capital, but I would not let them face the bank alone. 2 hours later, I drafted a settlement proposal. Avalanche drops the evictions funds, affordable units, covers my parents' mortgage in exchange for reduced penalties, and a public statement salvaging their commitment to ethical innovation. It was a gamble bordering on lunacy, but sometimes the only negotiation chip you own is the fire you're willing to set, and avalanches by nature only stop when the slope beneath them shifts. I hit send pulse matching the cursor's blink and waited for the mountain to answer. The reply landed at 3 a.m. Avalanche would talk, but only if Nathan signed a cooperation agreement, and I resigned from Whitaker and Sloan to avoid conflict optics. Dawn found me on the balcony watching sunflowers in a neighbor's planter crane toward first light petals, ragged yet stubborn. And I understood the symbol my parents had tried to hand me outside the bar ceremony. Grow toward warmth, even when roots remember frost. I dialed Whitaker's senior partner braced for the guillotine. Instead, she offered a quieter path pro bono unit full backing headline risk be damned. Law, she said, still honors the brave occasionally. By noon, Avalanche caved on the injunction a trust fund inked to rehab the building, and Nathan, pale but upright, signed papers that traded his CEO badge for whistleblower immunity and a consultancy that might one day rebuild what he'd torched. When the press conference ended, he stood beside me, no podium, no drones, just two brothers blinking under flashbulbs. "You think Mom's petunias will survive a November move?" he asked. I shrugged. "They've lived through worse." Camera shutters clicked a flock, taking flight, and in that frozen surge of light, I felt the story pause on a comma, not a period, the next sentence unwritten, but finally ours to draft if we were willing to hold the pen.